I wasn't supposed to be on that beach. That's the part I keep coming back to when I try to explain what happened to myself at 3 a.m. lying awake next to someone who doesn't know any of this. I wasn't supposed to be there. The beach at Pellerin Cove isn't a destination. It's a place you end up when the coastal road gets flooded out and the detour signs route you through a strip of old fishing shacks and closed down oyster stands. I was driving back from a work conference in a city I'd never planned to visit, in a rental car that smelled like someone else's cologne, and the rain had finally eased into that thin salt mist that you only get when you're close to the ocean. I pulled over because I needed to stretch. That's all. My back was knotted up from 6 hours of hunching over a steering wheel, and my phone was showing a signal that came and went like it was breathing, and I wanted 5 minutes of air before I tried to find a motel. The parking lot wasn't really a parking lot. It was just a flat patch of crushed shell where the asphalt gave up. There was a single wooden sign, half rotted, that said something about swimming at your own risk, and a low metal chain across a path that had been stepped over so many times the chain hung slack in the middle. I stepped over it without thinking. That's the kind of detail that bothers me now. How easy it was. How I didn't even register that I was crossing something. The beach was narrow. More stones than sand, the kind of shore where the tide has spent a long time sorting the rocks by size without ever finishing the job. The wind was coming off the water in long, unhurried pulls. And the sky had that bruised color it gets right before full dark, where the clouds still have some light in them, but the horizon has already given up. I walked down toward the water because that's what you do. You don't drive 6 hours and stop at a beach and then stand in the parking lot. You go to the edge. That's where the bottle was. I want to be careful here, because I've told this part to myself so many times I've probably smoothed it. But the bottle wasn't dramatic. It wasn't one of those green glass things you see in paintings. It was a plain brown beer bottle, the kind that comes in a 12-pack from any gas station in the country. And the label had been soaked off so long ago that only the glue residue was left. It was lying on its side in a little cradle of kelp, and the cork in the neck wasn't really a cork. It was a wad of cloth, pushed in tight, with a thin string tied around the neck to keep it from working loose. I almost walked past it. I'm going to be honest about that, because it matters. I saw it, I registered it, and I almost kept walking. Part of me even rolled my eyes. A bottle on a beach with something in it. Someone's idea of a joke, or a kid's project, or a piece of litter someone had gotten creative with. I was tired and I was cold and I had a motel to find. But I stopped. I don't know why. I turned around and came back, and I picked the bottle up, and the weight of it was wrong. Too light to have water in it, too heavy to be empty. I worked the cloth out of the neck with my thumb, and it came loose, easier than I expected. And when I tilted the bottle, a roll of paper slid halfway into the opening and stopped. I had to break the bottle to get it out. The paper was thicker than I'd thought. I found a flat stone and tapped the glass against it until the neck cracked, and I pulled the paper out carefully so I wouldn't cut my hand. The paper was dry. That's the first thing I want you to understand. The paper was completely, impossibly dry. The outside of the bottle had been wet. The cloth had been damp. But the paper inside was the kind of dry you'd get from a desk drawer in a house with good heating. It was folded 3 times. Lined paper, the kind you'd tear out of a spiral notebook, with the little ragged edge still on one side. The handwriting was in blue ballpoint, and it was neat, without being fussy. The kind of handwriting that belongs to someone who writes a lot by hand and has stopped thinking about how it looks. I read it standing there in the wind, with the bottle still in pieces at my feet. It started, "I know this is going to sound strange, but I've been waiting to write this to you for a long time. I want to tell you that I laughed. I want to tell you I assumed it was a generic letter, the kind of thing a person writes and puts in a bottle, hoping a stranger will find it, full of vague encouragement that would apply to anyone. A chain letter for the ocean. Something someone had done on a boring afternoon. But by the end of the first paragraph, it had already named my sister. Not a name like Sarah or Emily, her actual name. The name she was given and then stopped using at 14 because she hated it, and which only 3 people in the world still know. The letter used that name, and it used it the way family uses it casually, mid-sentence, as if the writer had grown up hearing it. I remember I looked up. I actually looked up from the paper and turned in a full circle, as if someone might be standing on the beach watching me. There was nobody. The wind kept doing what wind does. A gull cut across the sky a long way out and didn't come back. I read the rest of it squatting on my heels, because my legs had gone strange. The letter talked about the winter our father got sick. It mentioned the specific hospital. It mentioned the vending machine in the second-floor waiting room that only took quarters, and how my sister and I had counted change out of both our wallets to get a single bag of pretzels the night we thought he wasn't going to make it. I had not thought about that vending machine in 9 years. I'm not sure I had ever spoken about it out loud to anyone. It was not a story. It was not even a memory I'd formed into words. It was just something that had happened one of the unglamorous hours of a bad week. And somehow it was on this paper, in blue pen, in handwriting I didn't recognize, in a bottle on a beach I had no reason to be standing on. The letter said, "You don't have to be scared. I'm not writing this to scare you." I read that line maybe 4 times. Then the letter said, "But you should know that the road you took tonight wasn't the only way. You chose it. I want you to remember that you chose it." I folded the paper. I folded it carefully, along the same 3 folds it had come in, and I put it in the inside pocket of my jacket, and I walked back to the car. I didn't run. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't panicking. I was doing the thing you do when your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. I was moving with purpose, without knowing what the purpose was. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time with the door closed and the engine off. The rental car had one of those dashboards that lights up faintly even when the car isn't running. Just a soft glow from the clock and the climate panel. And I watched the minutes change. I watched 7:40 become 7:41, become 7:42. I don't know what I was waiting for. I think I was waiting to feel normal again, and when that didn't happen, I started the engine and drove. I found a motel about 20 minutes inland, a chain place, the kind with a laminated breakfast menu hanging on the inside of the door and a coffee maker that's been descaled so many times the plastic has gone yellow. The woman behind the desk asked me if I was okay, and I realized I must have looked strange because she said it gently, the way you'd say it to someone who'd been in a small accident. I told her I was just tired. She gave me a key card and told me the ice machine on my floor was broken, but the one on the second floor worked. In the room, I sat on the edge of the bed with my jacket still on, and I took the letter out again. I want to describe what I felt, but the only honest word for it is recognition. Not fear exactly. Not yet. It was the feeling you get when you walk into a room and realize you've been in it before, even though you're sure you haven't. The handwriting wasn't mine, but it was familiar the way a voice on the phone is familiar before you've placed who it is. I read it a third time. I read it slowly. There were things in it I hadn't caught the first time because the first time I'd been hit too hard by my sister's name and the vending machine. But on the third read, I noticed the smaller details. The letter mentioned a dog named Pepper. We had a dog named Pepper when I was 11. She was a mutt my mother picked up from a shelter in a town we lived in for less than 2 years. And she died of something quick and ugly before I turned 13, and we never got another dog. The letter said, "You still think about Pepper sometimes when you can't sleep." And that was true. That was so specifically, embarrassingly true that I felt my face get warm in the empty motel room, as if someone had caught me at something. The letter mentioned a girl I'd kissed in a stairwell at a party in college, whose name I hadn't been able to remember for years, and which came back to me the instant I saw it on the page. The letter mentioned the exact argument I'd had with my mother the last time I visited her, down to the dish she'd been drying when she said the thing that hurt me. The letter mentioned a recurring dream I have about a house with too many hallways, which I have never told anyone about ever because it feels too stupid to describe. And then, near the bottom of the page, the letter said, "I'm writing this because I need you to understand that I know you. I have always known you. And the thing I'm about to ask of you isn't unreasonable because of that." The letter ended there. There was no request. There was no signature. The bottom of the page was blank, except for a single line in the margin, written sideways, as if it had been added later. It said, "Come back tomorrow." I didn't sleep that night. I lay on top of the covers with the television on mute, showing a home renovation show where a couple was arguing about tile, and I watched their faces change without sound for what must have been 4 hours. I kept trying to construct the normal explanations. Someone was playing a prank. Someone had researched me. Someone had watched me for a long time and learned these things and planted the bottle, knowing I would take that road, knowing I would stop, knowing I would walk down to the water. But the road had been a detour, an unplanned detour because of weather I couldn't have predicted, on a trip I hadn't wanted to take, in a rental car assigned to me at random at a counter in an airport I'd only flown into because my original flight had been canceled. Nobody had known I would be there. I hadn't known I would be there. Around 4 a.m, I started to believe that the simplest explanation was that I had imagined the letter, that I'd fallen asleep in the car and dreamed it, and that when I looked in my jacket pocket, I would find nothing, or a gum wrapper or a receipt. I reached over to the chair where I'd hung the jacket, and I put my hand in the inside pocket, and the paper was there folded in thirds, and it was warm. It was warmer than the rest of the jacket. I don't know how to explain that, except to tell you that it was the temperature of something that had just been held. I didn't go back the next day. I want to say that in a way that doesn't sound like pride, because it isn't. I didn't go back because I was afraid, and because the adult thing to do, the thing any reasonable person would do, was to get in the car and drive the rest of the way home and pretend the beach hadn't happened. That's what I did. I checked out of the motel at 6 a.m, I drove without stopping. I got home by early afternoon, and I put the letter in the bottom drawer of my desk under a stack of old tax returns, and I did not take it out again for 11 days. In those 11 days, I tried to be a person with a normal life. I went to work. I answered emails. I had dinner with my girlfriend, who I've been with for 4 years and who I love, and who noticed immediately that something was off and asked me about it 3 separate times. I told her I was tired from the trip. I told her the conference had been stressful. I told her I thought I might be coming down with something. She's a patient person and she let me have my evasion, but I could see her filing it away and I knew she'd come back to it. I tried to forget the letter the way you try to forget a dream, by not rehearsing it, by letting the details blur. But the details didn't blur. If anything, they sharpened. At work, in the middle of a meeting about quarterly numbers, I would suddenly remember the exact phrasing of a sentence in the letter, and my throat would tighten and I would have to reach for my water. At night, lying next to my girlfriend, I would hear a car pass on the street outside and think, irrationally, that it had something to do with me. On the 11th day, I took the letter out again. I was alone in the apartment. She was at a yoga class she goes to on Thursdays. I sat at the desk and unfolded the paper, and I read it a 4th time, and this time something was different. There was more writing on it. I want you to understand that I had folded the paper and put it in a drawer. The drawer had been closed. The apartment had been locked. And the letter, which had ended with "come back tomorrow" in the margin, now had a second paragraph under that line. The second paragraph said, "I know you didn't come back. I'm not angry about that. I would have been surprised if you had. But I want you to understand that the offer doesn't expire. And I want you to understand that I am patient. And I want you to understand that there are some things you already know about yourself that you have chosen not to look at directly." And then it said, "The dream about the hallways isn't a dream." I sat at the desk for a long time. I don't know how long. When I heard my girlfriend's key in the door, I folded the paper and put it back in the drawer, and I stood up too fast and had to steady myself on the edge of the desk. And when she came into the room, she said my name in a worried voice, and I told her I'd stood up too fast and that was all. That night, I told her I loved her. I told her before she'd even said anything to me. She looked at me across the kitchen with the kind of expression you have when someone has done something slightly out of character, and then she smiled and she said it back. And we ate dinner and watched something on the television and went to bed. I lay next to her and listened to her breathing get slow and even, and I thought about the dream I have sometimes, about the house with too many hallways. In the dream, I am a child. I'm walking through a house that is shaped like my grandmother's house, but it has been extended in ways it shouldn't be. There are hallways branching off the main hallway that shouldn't fit inside the footprint of the building. I walk down one, and it opens onto another. I walk down that one, and it opens onto another. I am never frightened in the dream. I am looking for something or someone, and I am calm about it because I know I will eventually find the right hallway. I have had this dream off and on since I was a child. I'd never told anyone about it. Not my sister, not my girlfriend, not a therapist I saw briefly in my late 20s. It wasn't a secret exactly. It was just too small to share and too specific to describe without sounding strange. The letter knew about it. The letter said it wasn't a dream. I didn't look at the letter for 3 weeks after that. I didn't open the drawer. I moved the tax returns to a different drawer, so I would have no reason to open that one. I told myself that not looking was the same as not knowing, and I tried to make a life out of that belief. But I started noticing hallways. This is the part that's hard to describe, because I know how it sounds. I started noticing in ordinary buildings that hallways went on a little longer than I remembered. In the parking garage at work, the corridor from the elevator to my car was one stretch longer than it should have been. I counted the pillars. There had always been 6. Now, some days, there were 7. Not every day. On the days there were 7, I would stand very still at the elevator and count them again, and sometimes the count would go back to 6, and I would tell myself I had miscounted the first time. In the office, the hallway from my desk to the break room had a small alcove in it that I had never used, because it didn't go anywhere. One afternoon, I realized the alcove was deeper than it had been. Not dramatically, just deep enough that a person could have stood in it without being easily seen. I went into it. There was nothing there. It was just a space. But when I came back the next morning, it was shallow again, and I stood in the hallway for a long time trying to figure out if I'd imagined the previous day, and I couldn't. At home, the hall between our bedroom and the bathroom got longer at night. Only at night. Only when I walked it in the dark. I started counting my steps. In the daytime, it was 7 steps. At night, sometimes it was 9. Once it was 11. I stopped drinking water after 9 in the evening so I wouldn't have to walk it. I want you to understand that I am not a person who believes in these things. I work in accounts receivable. I balance spreadsheets. I have a framed degree in economics on the wall of the apartment. I do not believe in hallways that change length. I did not believe in hallways that changed length, even as I was counting the steps. My girlfriend noticed I wasn't sleeping. She asked me one Sunday morning over coffee if I wanted to talk about whatever had been wrong since the trip. I almost told her. I came very close. I had the letter in my head folded and refolded, and I thought about going to the drawer and taking it out and putting it on the table between us and letting her read it. But I didn't, because I was afraid that when I opened the drawer, there would be a 3rd paragraph. Instead, I told her I thought I needed to take some time off. She said that was a good idea. She offered to come with me somewhere, anywhere, a cabin, a city, whatever I wanted. I told her I thought I needed to go alone, just for a few days, and I could see her face close, a little at that. But she nodded. I did not go back to Pellerin Cove. I want to be clear about that too. I went the opposite direction. I drove inland to a small lake town where my family had rented a cabin once when I was a kid, and I stayed in a bed and breakfast run by a woman in her 60s who made the same breakfast every morning and didn't ask me any questions. I walked around the lake in the mornings. I read paperbacks from a shelf in the common room. I did not think about the letter, or I tried not to, and for 4 days I almost believed that I had put distance between myself and whatever had happened. On the 5th morning, the woman who ran the bed and breakfast handed me an envelope with my coffee. She said, "This came for you?" I asked her who had brought it. She said a young man had dropped it off at the front desk the night before. She described him vaguely. Average height, dark jacket. She hadn't gotten a good look because she'd been in the kitchen and he'd left the envelope on the counter and gone. The envelope had my name on it, not my full name, the name my family calls me, which is a shortening only my mother and sister use, and which is not the name I had given when I checked in. I took the envelope up to my room. I sat on the bed and I held it for a while before I opened it, and I am not going to pretend I was brave about it because I wasn't. My hands were shaking when I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper folded in thirds. The handwriting was the same. It said, "I'm glad you took the time. You needed it. I want you to know that I'm not asking you to do anything you haven't already been doing. The hallways have always been there. You've been walking them your whole life. The only thing I'm asking is that you stop pretending you don't know where they go." And then, at the bottom, it said, "When you're ready, you'll find me where the hallway is longest. You already know which one that is." I packed my things that afternoon. I drove home. I did not open the drawer in my desk. I did not look for the letter. I went into the apartment and I hugged my girlfriend for a long time, and she held on to me without asking any questions, because she's a good person and she understood that something had happened and that I would tell her eventually or I wouldn't. That was 14 months ago. I have not opened the drawer. The letters, both of them, are still in there. I don't know if there are more paragraphs now. I don't know if there are more letters. I've chosen not to know, and I've built my days around that choice. And most days it works, but the hallways are still getting longer. The one in our apartment now is sometimes 13 steps at night. I've learned to walk it with my eyes half closed, the way you walk through a room you don't want to see clearly. I don't count anymore. Counting made it worse. If you count, you are acknowledging that there is something to count, and the hallway, whatever it is, seems to respond to being acknowledged. At work, the alcove has become a small room. I don't go near it. I take a different route to the break room now, through the other side of the floor, and I have told my coworkers that I like the long way because I need the steps. They have accepted this because people accept most small eccentricities if you're pleasant about them. I dream about the house more often now. The hallways in the dream are more detailed than they used to be. I can see the wallpaper, which I could not see before. It's a pale green with a small pattern of something I can't quite identify. Leaves or feathers repeating. The floors are wood, and the wood is the same wood as the floor in my grandmother's house, which was torn down when I was 19. In the dream, I am still looking for something, and I am still calm, and the calm is the part that frightens me when I wake up, because I know that the calm means I am close. I haven't told my girlfriend. I haven't told my sister. I haven't told anyone until now, and I'm telling this the way you tell something into a recorder in an empty room, because I need it to exist outside of my head. And because I have started to suspect that the letter was right about one thing. The letter said it knew me. It said it had always known me. I have started to think that the handwriting was familiar the first time I saw it, because it was mine. Not the handwriting I have now. The handwriting I would have had if my life had gone a slightly different way. If I had taken a different road home from a different trip. If I had made a different choice at some point I can't identify. If I had walked down a different hallway when I was small and not come back. I think the letter was written by the version of me that did. I think he has been waiting a long time for me to find him. I think he is patient, the way he said he was, because he has nowhere else to be. He lives in the hallways. He lives in the version of the house that my grandmother's house became when it was extended in directions that shouldn't fit. He has been walking toward me my whole life, one paragraph at a time, and the only reason he hasn't arrived is that I keep not opening the drawer. Some nights, when the hallway to the bathroom is very long, I stop halfway down it and I listen. I don't know what I'm listening for. Footsteps, maybe. Or the sound of a pen on paper. Or my own name, said in a voice I would recognize without ever having heard it before. I haven't heard any of those things yet. But the other night my girlfriend asked me, half asleep, why I'd been standing in the hall for so long. I told her I hadn't been. I told her I'd just gone to the bathroom and come right back. She said, "You were gone for almost an hour." I looked at the clock. She was right. I didn't remember any of it. I remembered stepping into the hallway, and I remembered stepping out of it, and in between, and there was something that my memory had folded up and put away. The way you fold a piece of paper into thirds and slide it into an inside pocket. I have started to wonder if the letter isn't waiting for me to come to it. I have started to wonder if some nights I'm already going. And the worst part, the part I cannot stop thinking about, is that when I try to picture what I might find at the end of the longest hallway, I don't picture a stranger. I don't picture a monster. I picture a desk and a lamp and a sheet of lined paper and a hand holding a blue ballpoint pen, and the hand looks like mine, older than mine, tired in a way mine hasn't gotten tired yet, and it is writing something very carefully, and it is almost finished. I think it is writing the next paragraph. I think when it is done, I will find it in the drawer. And I think the morning after that, I will not wake up in this bed. I will wake up in a house I've been walking toward since I was a child, in a hallway I've counted my whole life without knowing I was counting, and someone who knows my real name, the one my mother gave me and my sister stopped using, will be sitting across from me at a kitchen table, I remember, without ever having seen. And he will pour me coffee, and he will smile, and he will say finally, and I will understand that I have been the stranger all along. I keep the drawer closed. I keep the hallway lights on. I walk quickly, and I don't count. And I love my girlfriend, and I go to work, and I answer emails, and I am trying so hard to be the version of myself that stays on this side of the paper. But I found a letter on a beach that I wasn't supposed to be on. And it was written for me. And I think some nights when the house is quiet and the hallway is longer than it should be, that I can hear the sound of someone on the other side of the wall, writing patiently in a handwriting I have always almost recognized, waiting for me to stop pretending. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how this ends. I only know that somewhere, in a drawer I haven't opened in over a year, there is a sheet of paper with my name on it, and every time I think about it, I am certain, absolutely certain, that there are more words on it now than there were the last time I looked. And the hallway tonight is 15 steps long. And my girlfriend is already asleep. And the lamp in the living room is still on, and I can see it from here. And the light is very steady and very warm, and I have not yet decided whether I am going to get up to turn it off.